Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Hello, I'm Kerry L. Watt and welcome to the show. Now, I was reading recently on the BBC that a survey conducted in 2018 found there are around 600,000 vegans living in Great Britain at the moment. The Veganuary website tells us that over 500,000 people have participated in the Veganuary campaign since 2014 from 178 countries around the world. And the Vegan Society stated that veganism gets almost 4 times more interest than vegetarian and gluten-free searches online. And vegan meals are said to be the UK's fastest growing takeaway choice. And over a quarter of all evening meals in the UK are vegan or vegetarian as well. And 87% of Veganuary participants are said to be female. Now, my guest today has some fascinating insight into vegan versus these meat diets. And that's exactly what we're going to be talking about today. So please welcome Heather Rosa to the show. Welcome, Heather.
Hello, Kerry.
Hi. So let's go back to that statistic I said a moment ago about like 600,000 vegans living in Great Britain. Does that surprise you at all?
I think it does. I think it's probably higher than I expected. It depends on how many of those are vegan really in the true sense of being a vegan, which is not just the dietary approach of eating no animal-based foods, into the philosophical approach of taking that into not wearing, for example, wool or leather, and into the lifestyle component of the vegan philosophy. So I'm quite surprised.
Yeah, that's a good point actually when you say that, because I would hear the word vegan and just presume food, but actually you're right, it's the whole lifestyle, isn't it, around it?
I think that's why the whole term plant-based developed as a sort of differentiation between a philosophical vegan approach and people who just wanted to give up meat.
Yeah. And what would you say is the biggest misconception or myth around becoming a vegan?
That's an interesting question. Myth. It depends on whose side you're asking for the myth, a vegan myth or an animal eater's myth.
That's true, yeah.
An animal eater's myth about vegans or a vegan's myth about animal eaters. Yeah.
I would say, like, one about, so if someone is a vegan or if they're thinking of becoming a vegan, like, what is there a myth around, so say, I mean, I'm not a vegan, but, you know, if I was thinking about it and thought, oh, actually, you know, I want to give up meat, it's going to be healthier for me, you know, is there any kind of misconception around that?
I think the biggest misconception is that if you remove a major nutritional component from your diet, that you're going to be well without some form of additional support into that diet in the form of supplementation. So I think that's the biggest myth, that you can actually survive on this diet without any additional input from supplementation or fortified foods, because the largest missing component in the vegan diet is B12.
Oh wow! Yes, of course. Yes, that makes sense. Yeah,
pernicious anemia.
Yeah,
it's a slow deficiency. It takes anywhere between 5 and 8 years to develop pernicious anemia, but once you have it, that's injectable B12 for life, and it has neurological issues, brain function, motor issues, etc. It's a slow, insidious deficiency, one that's not picked up very, very quickly.
Wow, that's fascinating actually. So yeah, so it's not just a case of, oh, I'm just going to cut out meat, it'll be fine. You actually kind of
it's a lot more complicated than that. Yeah, you have to really be giving a lot of consideration to the food that you're eating and the quality of the food you're eating, and also ensuring that you're eating food that has that supplementary B12 in it, or that you are taking a good bioavailable B12 supplement.
Yeah, and I know quite a few, even just in my social circle, of mothers that are sort of choosing a vegan diet for their kids as well. And I'm just kind of think, oh, wow, gosh, you know, I would assume that, you know, certainly dairy and things like that are things that they need while they're growing, right?
Dairy is an interesting one because it's probably not necessary while you're growing, as long as you're getting the nutrients in other foods. However, it does make, in a northern climate, which we live in, and if you're using whole milk, you're getting the source of vitamin D that we're not getting from the sunlight. So that's one of the interesting factors with milk, and why we developed milk into our diet in the northern hemisphere, is it does give us that vitamin D. So if you are removing milk, you have to make sure that you have significant sunlight exposure during the summer months, because the winter months in the UK are not sufficient to get vitamin D levels up. And also that you're eating foods like oily fish, etc., that have large amounts of vitamin D in them. So it's problematic. That's why you'll find fortification of margarine with vitamin D, and also fortification of nut milks with additional vitamin D.
Oh, wow. That's really interesting, actually. I love that, because I sort of, it's certainly a topic, isn't it, when we're talking about diets, even just with friends and things. So I have to say, it is fascinating when you kind of look into the science of these things and actually, what is necessary as well as, needed. And what about the Veganuary campaign? It's obviously, as we're recording this, January at the moment, so there's lots of people choosing to just be, go vegan just for this month of January. How do you think that's quite a positive message, a positive campaign? How do you feel about that?
I think it's not a positive message at all. And that's why I'm #Organuary, which is a different campaign which was set up by the Public Health Collaboration to encourage people to eat more organ meat, which is the most nutritional foods on the planet. So I think Veganuary is why are you doing this? What's your motive for going meat free? Is it an environmental issue? Is it a philosophical issue around animal husbandry? Why are you doing this? Because as you do this, a lot of people are not attending to the quality of the food they're eating. They're just buying foods which are labeled vegan or plant-based. And it's a fantastic money spinner for the plant-based manufacturing sector. So, I would rather people eat less processed foods, and a lot of the whole Greg's sausage roll, the vegan sausage roll, and now the vegan pie. These are not nutritional options. These are high fat, high sugar, refined food products that are making a lot of money for the manufacturers but not doing very much for your health. So I think there's a lot in there about motivation. There's a lot people talk to me about the climate. And I think one of the things that we're going to see in 2020 and as we go along is a bigger debate around the climate and animal husbandry and animal production, food production, because vegan foods are not any less environmentally impactful. When you're producing highly refined foods, that requires energy and a waste and all sorts of issues. When you plow a wheat field, you kill animals. So there's no aspect of the food chain that doesn't include some form of killing of animals. And I think there'll be a lot more discourse on this as we go into 2020, and what the real implications are for the planet and the environment. When you make a sugar alternative from fruit, you've got to highly process that fruit to remove certain chemical structures that retain the sweetness, and that has a big environmental impact. So I think people will start to get a little bit more savvy in 2020 about exactly how food is made and what the impact of the food is on the environment, not just the packaging, but the actual production methodology. So I think I've got a bit off topic there, Kerry.
No,
Apologies.
it's wonderful. No, it's fascinating actually. That's
And
really, really interesting.
there's another interesting thing as well. One of my areas that I lecture on is the use of insects in nutrition.
Oh wow.
And most people who are eating, say, even a bar of chocolate, even really good quality 70% single estate chocolate, are eating insects, because there is an allowable percentage of insect contamination within food manufacturing. So it's very difficult to get any processed food or any food that's manufactured and packaged that doesn't have an insect component. For example, 500-gram bag of fruits to make a smoothie with can have up to six parts of a grub in it, and mold, allowable by law, because it's impossible to not have foods that are uncontaminated by insects.
Wow.
And of course, if you live in a hot country like India, that contamination with insects is even higher. So it's quite interesting, because insects are a highly nutritious food source, a very good sustainable food source, as long as they're not being produced in the UK and in the Northern Hemisphere, which requires a lot of heat and light. If they're more produced in the Pacific Rim, where the ambient temperature outside is sufficient for the growth, then more environmentally sustainable. But yes, there is a lot of insects in the food chain, and they contain B12, they contain iron, they contain calcium. They're highly nutritious. And if you love to forage, if you're going, foraging your blackberries, you're not always looking at each one. So you are often eating pupae and larvae and insect parts.
Oh wow, that's
so now a lot of your audience is going to be grossed out.
It's crazy, isn't it? It's just, you just wouldn't ever think about it. Although I have to say,
but that's how far we are removed from the food chain, from actually our hunter-gatherer ancestors, and our bodies are basically still in that physiological position. We are designed for a wide set of foods, not processed or minimally processed, and meat and fish were a large part of those diets. There is no vegan civilization in the world.
Yeah. And it was really interesting, actually, what you said before, certainly with, apologies, Greg's, those kind of big chains that are obviously, jumping on the bandwagon of, vegetarian and vegan items, as well as, recipes that they may create and stuff like that. Because I actually read recently that apparently, retail sales are expected to increase to like £650 million a year or something by 2021. And I just my jaw kind of dropped at that. I was like, wow, that is just such a huge industry.
It's very difficult to make money in the food industry because of spoilage. So the more you can manufacture a product, you can refine a product and make it stable on the shelf, the more profit you're going to make in the long term. But that doesn't always equate to human health.
Yeah. Can you tell us, sort of going into your background, really, what led you to start working within the world of health and education?
Oh, crikey, it started a long time ago. I think, like many of our students who come to the Institute for Optimum Nutrition, it was all sort of sparked by illness and finding that you couldn't resolve the illness through sort of orthodox medicine and a drug approach, that the orthodox medicine didn't have an answer for you. It has answers for lots of things, but not for chronic long-term health conditions, and finding that nutrition actually was what got you better. And it wasn't an orthodox approach to nutrition, and therefore where on earth do you study this because you want to help other people? And when this was happening to me, the only place was the Institute for Optimum Nutrition, which was set up by Patrick Holford. And I joined as a student in the second year that the course ever ran. Wow. So I sort of what you call an early adopter. And I'd got a background in education, so after doing my training, my natural inclination was to sort of explore how to expand this training and how to improve on the training and how to get it recognized. And that's what I've been doing for the last 30 years. So I'm an honorary member of our professional body for my services to education, because that's what I really work on now. I'm not a practitioner anymore. I work solely in education.
And what you briefly mentioned the Institute for Optimum Nutrition as well. So is that, I guess, being a student, what led you to then, work with them?
Yes, via a rather circuitous route, because I've only been with the Institute for Optimum Nutrition now for 6 years. I worked for a number of organizations developing education programs in nutritional therapy, and eventually got to realize my ambition, which was to have a degree in nutritional therapy. And about 18 years ago, started the first degree in nutritional therapy at the University of Westminster, and that ran for 16 years. Wow. And when that came to an end, that's when I joined the Institute for Optimum Nutrition to help them explore how they take their education further and look at how we can develop that education, not just for nutritional therapists, but for doctors and other allied health professionals. So expand the training out to others who are really becoming interested in this individualized approach, this personalized approach, rather than the healthy eating plate, one size fits all approach. It's really quite fascinating that a lot more orthodox healthcare providers are beginning to see that they need a different approach to nutrition and want to explore that. And that's where you've got the public health collaboration, you've got the Real Food Campaign, you've got the British Holistic Medical Association, BANT, which is my professional body, which is the British Association for Nutrition and Lifestyle Medicine. So it's really interesting how people are beginning to realize that it is the individual that you have to work with, and the individual who has to explore what's right for them. And for some people, less meat suits them better, and for others, more meat suits them better. So it's really interesting looking at individual needs in nutrition.
And do you think it's quite important for people to kind of review their diet as a whole? Does that make sense? Or just to kind of, because we just kind of, we're busy, we just kind of cook, what's there or what we're used to. Do you think it's quite important to sort of, reflect and review and think, oh, actually, maybe I
think that's becoming more and more prevalent now. This sort of more mindful, conscious approach to eating is developing. People are getting more and more interested in seasonality of food, the provenance of food, the quality of food. They're beginning to be more educated around these aspects of their food and nutrition. So I think it's useful every so often to look at what you're doing. It's hard because we live in a fast, crazy lifestyle where we want simple things, and that's where convenience foods come in. And there are convenience foods out there which are healthier than others, and it's a question of choice. And this is where box meals are coming in, where you've got Gusto and other companies, ugly box schemes, the Riverford schemes, these where food is being sent to you, but it's increasing now that the food is being sent to you with a recipe and portion sizes to make.
Yeah.
So that you're not having to go and buy it, but you're getting fresh food sent to you. So it's interesting that we've gone sort of like total convenience and now coming back to sort of more involvement in the actual cooking part.
Yeah.
Which means that you're working with more fresh foods.
And that's true, actually. It's a good point, isn't it? Where we're still, certainly with those meal boxes, I have to say I've tried quite a few of them now, and I think they're fantastic. I just love them.
I think we're going to see much more of that, and much more of them sort of focusing on particular aspects of health. So, for example, type 2 diabetes is the major problem in the UK at the moment. And I think you'll start to see more people investing in a low carbohydrate diet, and these box schemes and products being designed for this.
Yeah, that's true, actually.
Mm.
I know, and I think you touched on it when you said sort of convenience, but actually, if we
Mm.
can get fresh food and
Mm.
like almost an idiot-proof recipe, with
Mhm.
it's really straightforward.
Mhm.
That is convenience mixed with
Yeah.
lovely, nutritious food as well, isn't it? So it's kind of getting both
Yeah.
in there for me, anyway.
Yeah, and that gets people trying new flavors, new tastes, etc. And at some point, they will hopefully start to cook their own foods from scratch and develop their skill sets. But one of the biggest problems we have now is a generation who are lacking in skills
Yeah,
in terms of buying food, what to look for, what's nutritious, what goes with each other, how long you cook it for, how long you store it for. I get quite a lot of people who in my friendship circle who ring me up and say, I've had this in the fridge a day over the date, can I still eat it? Or how long do I cook this for? So there's quite a lot of issues still around the skill set and what's going on in schools and teaching these skills.
yeah, I know. I think it's funny, actually. I was having a conversation recently with my grandmother. I mean,
Mm.
she was very young when she became a grandmother,
Mhm.
so she's only sort of, she's in her 70s, and she, and I was just saying to her how her brain is literally like a walking cookbook. She could
Mm. Mhm.
look at a bag of flour and she could do
Mhm.
12,000 things with it.
Mhm.
Whereas I would be like, I don't know, like I could make
Mhm.
cake, and I
Yeah,
was like, it's just crazy, isn't it, that we're just not passing these things down, and like I just don't know.
yes, it's become a spectator sport, hasn't it?
Mm.
Cookery programs on television, spectator sport, and it's really interesting how many people do actually go away and recreate these recipes.
Yeah.
I don't think very many do.
And then, do you think social media, the internet, and celebrities have a big part to play in the rise?
Very much so. I mean, as much as I love Beyonce, I really could slap her in a metaphorical way for her sort of ginger and cayenne water diet, vegan diet, for getting ready for her, her big show that she did.
Oh,
And
yeah,
then
yeah.
lots of young people going on a vegan diet as a result of it.
Mm.
And it's not even a healthy vegan diet. So I do have it is problematic because we do live in a social media world
Yeah.
where influencers are, crazy followings.
Mm.
And there appears to be almost a lack, I think, in the education in this country. God, I'm sounding old. Sounding really old and sort of grumpy, aren't I? Sort of grumpy old woman. But I do find that there's less ability in young people to argue and to challenge facts and figures, and it's quite interesting. And I'm not sure if that's our education system that
Mm.
just sort of prepares them for exams and doesn't get them into that level of thinking about
Mm.
things. Yeah. Anyway, I'm stop being grumpy old woman.
Oh no, it's fine. I'm literally like in my mid-30s, and I feel like really grumpy about social media as well. I think because I have a 5-year-old child as well, I just sort of think, oh gosh, what is my life going to be like when his
Mhm.
life is then consumed in about 10 years with all this
Mm.
stuff that he's going to be
Mhm.
consuming and things.
Mm.
And yeah, I know. I mean, I just saw on I think it was Instagram, someone who'd been on a reality TV show. To me, she
Mhm.
has like no personality.
Mhm.
I just don't get it.
Mhm.
She's got like 1.5 million followers, and like
Mm.
showing people,
Mhm.
the food that she's used, the makeup, and like people are just going nuts for these pictures and these posts.
And
And I'm like, wow, that is just incredible, the influence that we.
generating a lot of income for her.
Well, absolutely, yeah, it must be.
Obviously a savvy business person.
Yeah, yeah, it is frightening, isn't it?
I do worry. I mean, it can be a source for major change and for good as well.
Mm.
But it's the celebrity part is the interesting part. Yeah,
And
blind following. Mm.
and that's the thing. And quite often, these social media influencers aren't actually celebrities. They've just created this following themselves, haven't they, online?
Yes. Yeah, it is an interesting construct in our modern era, I have to say. Yeah. Anyway,
And what would be your number one piece of advice for people who are considering an alternative diet, maybe vegan.
I think to seek a really good source of advice, or maybe even to have a session with a nutritional therapist, where they can, because nutritional therapists don't just work with people who really are unwell. We work with people who want to stay well, so people who want to prevent Alzheimer's because it's in their family, or they just want to improve their fitness. So, a session with a nutritional therapist may well be a good place to start, where you can actually sit down and discuss these things with your individual needs.
And how would you even find a nutritional therapist? Is that something you guys have a list of? Or?
Yeah, that's fairly easy. There's two ways to find nutritional therapists. One is on the BANT website, which is www.bant.org.uk. I hope I got that right. And they have a list of all the trained nutritional therapists in the UK.
Oh, fantastic.
And if you're looking for an ION graduate, then they'll have DIP ION after their name. And the other is the regulator for the profession, which is the Complementary and Natural Healthcare Council, which is the CNHC. So that's cnhc.org. I think it's .org.uk. It might be just .org. Let's see. And they hold the list. It's .org. Sorry, just it's .org.uk. So cnhc.org.uk. So those are registered. So these are professionals who have insurance. They have professional body. They have regulator, and that's who I would see. And they're trained in clinical practice, unlike nutritionists who are not trained in clinical practice, and they're trained in this individualized approach, this personalized approach, which is what your listeners probably want, somebody who's listening to their health story and their life and understands the environment and the context in which they eat, and is personalizing the nutrition to that person.
Awesome. And I guess with modern day technology, we can probably meet in person, or
yes, we can. Yeah, we use Skype, we use Zoom, we use all sorts of ways of communicating. Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic.
ION has a training clinic as well, where it has its students. So if any of your listeners want a low cost option, then they could use our clinic at ION.
Oh, nice. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
And is there anything else that you feel is important for people to know that we haven't covered?
I think diversity is important in the diet, diversity of foods, looking at really getting whole foods as unprocessed as possible. That would be my sort of top line. And from there on in, it gets more complicated as you look at the individual's needs. But diversity and a variety of foods, keep the sugar to a minimum would be the other thing that I would say.
Okay. Yeah.
And don't eat all the time. That would be my other piece of advice. The snacking thing is just crazy. Yeah. Your body wasn't designed for all this high date-based, raisin-based snack bars that tout themselves as being healthy. Really keep some distance in between your meals. Try keeping at least 4 hours in between your meals.
Oh wow! Okay, that's interesting. Can I ask why? It was just
your body needs to recuperate from the digestive process.
Oh.
And rather than being stimulated continually with food input.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, that makes sense actually. Oh,
every time you drink something or eat something, it goes into the intestinal tract, and that's the external world that is full of the immune system protecting you from the outside world, and only allowing components of the diet in that are good for you. So every time you eat, your immune system is activated.
Oh, wow.
And that requires energy, that requires nutrients, resources to power it. So you need to give it some downtime, just like getting off of social media for a few hours.
Yeah.
Your digestive system needs its downtime as well.
Give your tummy a break, guys.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to say it.
That's awesome. Honestly, Fine. Yeah, I feel like I've learned so much. Thank you.
I think you're going to find that 2020 is a year of interesting discussions around, for example, fermented foods, prebiotics, probiotics, postbiotics, really sort of in getting those fermented foods back into our diet. They're quite common in traditional diets and Asian diets, for example, but I think you'll see much more of that coming into the fore in 2020 as well.
Amazing. Thank you. Well, thanks so much for sharing this and for being
It's
here.
been great, Kerry.
And how can someone that wants to find out more hear about yourself, Heather, or the Institute for Optimum Nutrition?
Well, they won't really find out much more about me, but the institute that I work for, it's very easy. It's just www.ion.ac.uk, and go and have a look at our website. We've got because we're a charity, we're an educational charity. We've got a fantastic magazine that comes out 4 times a year, and it's evidence informed, so it's very balanced, and that you can subscribe to that, or you can get it free via our website. And we also have a newsletter that comes out monthly as well, which is completely free as well, and you can sign up to that on our website. So that would be the way to connect with us.
Excellent. So that's www.ion.ac.uk.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Heather, Rosa. It's been an absolute pleasure. And thanks everyone for listening. Bye for now.
Thank you, Kerry. Bye.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.